Possible for us who have heard these readings so many times to hear it again as if for the first time. The primal experience that it points to in our own life, the equivalent of burning bushes or being turned around, or mountains being leveled and valleys being raised up. I mean, during the readings, it kind of just rolls over. How do we hear these stories anew? Why do we keep repeating the same stories? We have to work at it. And so what I'm attempting to do this morning is something different. When I think of wild, I think of the poet Mary Oliver. How many of you read Mary Oliver? I love Mary Oliver. So she describes the divine, in my experience, through her experience of the wild in nature. And so I hope this morning, this is more of like poetry reflection, and I hope that it brings you closer to the direct experience of the divine in your life. Not the theology that's written about it afterwards, or how you try to describe the indescribable. Because when we're talking about the divine, remember within the Jewish tradition, YHWH, the inutterable name of the divine, which is very humbling because we're limited. How could we possibly put into a box or name that which is unnameable? We are limited, language is limited. All we can do is point at it. And so here's this attempt. And I'm going to invite you to be in a meditative state so that you can access that part of yourself, almost like in a dreamlike state, where you're not censored. You're using more of your whole brain. The part of your brain that engages in dreams. Okay, so bear with me. Let's see where we go on this journey. Begin again here, where the fog lifts from the shoulders of the redwoods, where wild turkey and raccoon tracks stitch the damp earth, where the bay shimmers whispers its quiet questions. Begin again, not in a world as we wish it were, but in the world that actually holds us. Beautiful, trembling, unpredictable, wild, alive. This is where Advent begins. Mark's gospel wastes no time with angels or starlit mangers. Mark opens with a single spare line. John the Baptizer appeared in the wilderness. Not a house, not a sanctuary or temple, not a village, not a place anyone would call safe. Only a wild man in a wild place, calling out to anyone who would listen. And maybe the Holy One is telling us something in that. The wild wilderness is not a backdrop to the gospel. Wilderness is a doorway. We know wilderness here. Point Reyes cliffs, Muir Woods rising like a cathedral, Mount Diablo catching the early light, hills that burn and bloom again, the land itself preaching resurrection long before we ever named it. So why does the story begin out there, outside of buildings and temples and sanctuaries and churches, outside of our plans and our control and our theology? Because wilderness is the one place where we finally stop performing, where our practiced selves crumble a little, where the presence meets us as we are, not as we pretend to be. Isaiah hears the cry, not in a temple, in the wilderness, in a desert. Prepare the way. The way. Not perfection, not prepare certainty, just prepare the way. As if the path was made by walking. As if source of being appears not in what we've finished, but in what is still becoming. And there is Moses. Ordinary day, ordinary work, a bush catches fire without being consumed. He turns, curious, and hears, "Take off your shoes. The ground where you stand is holy." Why shoes? Why take off your shoes? Perhaps the one who is becoming wants us to feel our lives, to feel the earth beneath us, the grief, the beauty, the uncertainty, the fragility, and to discover that this too is holy. What if the parts of your life that feel unfinished are not signs of failure, but signs that something sacred is trying to break through? Advent asks us to tell the truth about fear, about exhaustion, about climate grief, about loneliness, about beauty and wonder and courage too. And then right in the middle of all of that, Advent asks us to light one candle. One small candle. Presence whispers, you do not need to be resolved to begin again. You do not need to be perfect. Source of being whispers, turn toward whatever burns within your heart, but does not consume you. The one who is becoming says, prepare the way. Start here. Do not be afraid. So, beloveds, take off your shoes. Feel your life. Feel the holiness touch you. This is where the wild Christ, this is where enlightenment source of being, the holy, the sacred, meets you, untamed, beloved, and impossibly free. Amen. And please now join in our sermon response in the Black New Century Hymnal, number 283, Spirit of the Living God.